when a mortal became the blade of judgment. There was one truth the gods of Olympus never dared to imagine. They could die. Since the dawn of creation, the Greek gods ruled from on high, sipping ambrosia, granting blessings, casting punishments, believing themselves eternal. They schemed, they lied, they betrayed each other, but never once did they believe that judgment would rise from below. Until Kratos came, not as a hero, not as a monster, but as a storm of fury shaped like a man, forged in war, tempered by grief, and sharpened by betrayal. Kratos did not come to build a new order. He came to burn down the old one, god by god, myth by myth, lie by divine lie. And every name he struck down had a reason. This is not just a list of gods slain by his hand. It is the history of a world collapsing, one fallen god at a time. When Olympus bled, immortality itself began to shatter. Ares, the first god to die. If there was ever a death that shook all of Olympus, it was the death of Ares, the god of war. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was loved, but because he was the first god killed by a mortal. When Ares chose a weapon instead of a disciple, Ares always longed to craft the perfect warrior, one without fear, doubt, or mercy. To Ares, war needed no emotion, only victory. And then he found Kratos, a brutal Spartan commander forged in discipline, a man who never knew the meaning of retreat. One fateful day, surrounded and desperate, Kratos knelt in the blood-soaked battlefield, looked to the heavens, and roared, "Ares, grant me the power to destroy my enemies, and I will serve you forever." Ares heard him, and in that moment, a blood pact was sealed. Two blades fell from the sky, the blades of chaos, and wrapped around Kratos' arms like shackles. Every chain, a debt. Every swing, a step closer to damnation. He won the battle, but the real price wasn't paid on the battlefield. It was waiting at home. Ares, eager to sever all humanity from his weapon, orchestrated a cruel trick. He lured Kratos' wife and daughter to a temple, the very one Kratos was sent to destroy. In a blind rage, Kratos killed them himself. By the time he realized, the temple was in flames. Blood stained the altar, and the cry of "Father" from little Calliope vanished into smoke. From that moment on, Kratos was no longer a man. He was a cursed soul, his skin stained with the ashes of his family. A punishment burned into him by the oracles. The ghost of Sparta had risen, not as a servant, but as vengeance incarnate, a hunt that threatened the entire pantheon. Kratos wandered the world, slaying beasts, fulfilling missions for the gods. But in his heart, one name burned brighter than the rest. Ares, the god who had turned him into everything he despised. Athena knew this, and she used it. She promised Kratos, "Kill Ares, and I will silence the nightmares." So began the hunt for Pandora's box, a mythical artifact said to hold the power to slay a god. Kratos crossed scorching deserts, climbed the back of the Titan Kronos, and braved the deadliest traps left by the ancient world. To kill a god, he had to become more than one. When he opened the box, power flooded him, and for the first time, Kratos stood as an equal to Ares. The creator faces his monster. Their final battle wasn't just muscle and blade. It was a reckoning. Ares unleashed illusions. He twisted Kratos' past, revived the ghosts of his wife and daughter, tried to drown him in regret. But Ares forgot one thing. Kratos had lived with pain every single day. In the end, Kratos seized the blade of Olympus, a divine weapon, and drove it straight through Ares' heart. The god of war howled in disbelief. He had forged a monster, and now died by its hand. No hymns were sung, only divine blood, raining from the sky, marking the first fall of Olympus. Kratos, the reluctant successor. After Ares' death, the gods gave Kratos a throne, god of war. He sat upon it, wrapped in power, and drowning in guilt. The nightmares never stopped. They dragged him back to that burning temple, to the cries of his daughter, to the blood on his own hands. Killing Ares didn't bring forgiveness. It only brought power no one dared challenge, and a loneliness no victory could erase. Poseidon, when the sea rose in wrath, then died in silence. Poseidon was one of the three supreme gods of the Greek world. Zeus ruled the skies, Hades governed the dead, and Poseidon, he commanded all the oceans. He held the sea in his palm, summoned tsunamis with a whisper, and could drown cities with a single roar. But when Kratos returned, not as a god, but as a walking catastrophe wielding blades, Poseidon was the first to stand in his way. The battle begins, a titan climbs, a mortal slays a god. Kratos did not come alone. This time, he rode atop Gaia, the Earth Mother, a primeval titan and sworn enemy of Olympus. Together, they stormed the mountain like a living earthquake. Poseidon answered with fury. He hurled his trident into the storm, summoning his full power, a monstrous oceanic avatar, formed of sea and scale, armor and lightning, water and wrath. The clash took place at the edge of the world. Titan versus God, man versus nature. Poseidon wasn't just fighting for Olympus. He was fighting for pride, that he was the sea, and no blade could pierce a wave. But Kratos had no interest in pride. He came only to kill. The death of a god, and the price it carried. As the battle raged, Kratos tore Poseidon from Gaia, dragging him into a brutal, close-quarters duel. At the brink of the world, it was a scene straight out of an ancient tragedy. Rising tides, a sky split by lightning, and at the center, a gasping god facing a man long used to slaughtering the sacred. Kratos beat Poseidon without mercy, not as a warrior, but as a butcher. With first-person blows, the player watches, as Poseidon's glowing blue eyes fade to the lifeless gray of the drowned. Finally, Kratos cast his broken body into the sea, and in that moment, the ocean changed. Its waters turned dark, foam turned red, tsunamis no longer receded. They advanced, consuming villages, cities, lives. Killing a god is not just ending a being. With Poseidon, it was the spark that ignited the wrath of nature itself. Poseidon was not evil, but he was not innocent. Some say Poseidon didn't deserve to die. He helped build Troy. He once protected mankind from chaos. But he also looked away when Ares ravaged the world. He remained silent when Zeus betrayed Kratos. And he saw mortals as little more than driftwood beneath his waves. Most of all, he chose Olympus, not truth. Kratos didn't kill Poseidon out of hatred. He killed him because Poseidon was the first wall standing between him and Zeus. And like all walls, it had to fall. Every death took a piece of the world with it. After Poseidon's fall, the sea was no longer sanctuary. Floods devoured the earth. Islands sank. Civilizations washed away like ashes on the tide. Kratos knew what he'd done, but he didn't stop. Because to him, the end of the world was still better than the survival of a rotting Olympus. Hades, when even death lost the right to die. Hades never cared for Olympus. Though he was brother to Zeus and Poseidon, he chose the shadows, ruling the underworld, where the dead waited in silence. He was not flamboyant, nor was he weak. He was law incarnate, where every soul, after death, lined up to drink from the river Lethe, to forget and to fade into eternal dusk. And for that very reason, Hades never forgave anyone who dared disturb the order of death. Kratos descends to the underworld, not the first time, but possibly the last. After slaying Poseidon, Kratos faced Zeus and lost. Pierced by the blade of Olympus, he plummeted from Gaia's back and died. But death, to Kratos, was just another room he'd visited before. His soul drifted down into the underworld, the same realm that once held him captive. But this time, he didn't come to be imprisoned. He came to kill the warden. Hades knew he was coming, and he was unafraid. For in his own realm, Hades believed himself untouchable, master of souls, keeper of chains. If Kratos died again, his spirit would be trapped forever. But Hades did not understand. Kratos hadn't come to escape. He came to rip the gates of hell apart. The battle, when blades touched the soul. Unlike Poseidon, who fought with nature's fury, Hades wielded soulcraft. He lashed Kratos with chains of the damned, ripping pieces of his spirit from his body, stripping away memory, pain, identity. Each strike wasn't blood, but agony reborn. But Kratos did not flinch. He dove headlong into the chains, fighting with the very trauma Hades tried to use against him. And when he seized the claws of Hades, he turned them on their master. In the end, Kratos reached into Hades' very being and tore his soul out. The moment death died, Hades screamed, but no one answered. There are no mourners in the underworld, only lost souls drifting through the void. As Kratos ripped the god's soul free, The red glow in Hades' eyes faded to black. A suffocating silence fell. No more rules. No more judgment. Death had no keeper. The consequence, when souls could no longer rest. Hades' death fractured the Greek cosmos. From that day on, souls could no longer pass on. They could not reincarnate. They could not forget. They wandered the earth, restless, bitter, echoing memories of a realm that no longer existed. When death dies, death no longer ends anything. It becomes a curse that never stops. Why did Hades have to die? Not because he was cruel, not because he had betrayed Kratos, but because he was part of Olympus. A cog in the machine of control, deception, and disdain. Kratos didn't slay Hades to rise again. He killed him to make even the underworld kneel, before the rage Olympus had created. And from that moment forward, the gods began to realize they were no longer immortal, and Kratos was no longer mortal. Helios, when even the sun wasn't bright enough to be forgiven. Helios, the sun god, son of Hyperion, was once praised as the radiant flame that rode across the sky each day, banishing darkness, lighting the path of mortals, and keeping chaos at bay with his eternal blaze. Unlike the vengeful gods of Olympus, Helios sought no power or no grudges, but he was loyally bound to Zeus, the one who placed him among the heavens. And for that, when Kratos began his war on Olympus, Helios did not stay out of it. He chose to be part of the order that needed protecting, and that put him on the death list. Light, imprisoned in darkness. Kratos found Helios not in glory, but in chains, captured by the Titan Perseus, a towering force of nature crushing the world in ancient fury. Even in captivity, Helios appeared like a being of legend, skin glowing with celestial warmth, eyes blazing like twin suns, a voice that rang like wind chimes at dawn. Helios pleaded. He begged Kratos to stop, to spare the sun, for without its light, the world would freeze. Mankind would panic, and even wandering souls would lose their way home. Kratos said nothing. He simply approached, and tore the god's head from his shoulders with his bare hands. A death that burned into myth. It remains one of the most brutal moments in the entire God of War saga. Helios, his head violently ripped off. Light peeled from flesh in a grotesque display of power. It wasn't just gruesome, it was symbolic. From that moment on, the sun stopped rising. The Greek world fell into a never-ending dusk. The skies dimmed to ashen gray. There was no dawn, no hope, only a faint, flickering glow. The severed head of Helios, carried by Kratos like a grotesque lantern. Kratos didn't just kill the sun. He wielded its corpse as a weapon, a symbol that even light must kneel before his wrath. The consequence, when darkness no longer feared the light. With Helios gone, the sun no longer rose. Darkness consumed the land, not just physical, but spiritual. Mines broke, plants withered, harvests failed, animals ran mad. Without light, not even gods could see each other. Helios' death left the world blind, just like Kratos himself, who, with each kill, wandered deeper into a night with no end. Why did Helios have to die? Helios never harmed Kratos, never lied, never betrayed, but he stood with those who did. He represented a light too weak to shine through the pain Kratos carried. And so Kratos passed judgment. Your light cannot see my suffering. You do not deserve to illuminate my path. When Helios' final gleam faded in Kratos' grip, the world understood. The sacred no longer existed. There was no light, no faith, and no one left brave enough to whisper, "He will stop." Thus fell the first gods under Kratos' blade. Ares, the beginning of all his pain. Poseidon, the master of the seas. Hades, keeper of the dead. Helios, the last light of the world. They were more than names. They were pillars of the ancient world, symbols of order, faith, and divine power. But to Kratos, they were pieces of betrayal that needed to be destroyed one by one. The world teeters on the brink of chaos, and Kratos' vengeance has only just begun, to be continued. In the next chapter, we'll descend further into darker, bloodier, more twisted territory, where the gods fall not from hatred, but because Kratos has gone too far to turn back. Hermes, Hera, Kronos, Zeus, who among them deserved death? And what did their fall truly mean for a world already shattered? See you in part 2 of The Gods Kratos Killed and Why They Had to Die. If you found this tale powerful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more mythological stories drenched in blood, sorrow, and the fire of ancient judgment.